getting this event in Europe. Yes, this very man is to be congratulated for bringing Bettakultcha back to York. I've no idea what you're talking about. Have you presented before?
No.
Do you get a badge?
I do, yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please, a huge round of applause for Mr. Paul Smith! You ready?
Yep. Okay, so I want to talk to you about what Paul Young teaches us about quality in art. So what can we learn from the work of this man that actually relates to modern art and how we perceive quality? Before I get on to Paul Young, what I'd like to start with is a fact. The fact is that Dan Brown is the greatest author ever. We know this to be a fact because his book, The Da Vinci Code, has sold more than any other book in the history of literature, over 5 million in the UK alone. So if that means that he's the best author ever, we've got some statistical evidence to support that. If it's not him, it's J.K. Rowling. The same newspaper that I got this information from, though, also published its list of the greatest books of all time. And as you can see, there's not a great deal of overlap between the greatest books of all time and the best-selling books of all time. It's also true in music. So the second biggest selling album of all time is AC/DC's Back in Black, which is a great album, I've got it, but actually I've not found anybody who thinks it's the second best album of all time. And this leads us to quite a simple conclusion, that taste and popularity does not equal quality. And that's evidenced by Shania Twain, who also appears on the top 10 list of best-selling albums of all time. So what we need is a graph. I have a graph, and mapping popularity or taste against quality. And if this was drawn to scale, then most would appear here in the masses, some in the classics, quite a bit in guilty pleasures, and we all have those. So, if you say this, I think this is quite a fatuous statement actually, because what you're saying is you're ignorant about art. If you said this about literature, I may not know anything about literature, but I know I like Dan Brown. It doesn't mean the same thing. So what's this got to do with Paul Young? And I really appreciate that the cultural references are about 30 years old here, so some of them might not have been born. But in 1983, so 30 years ago, Paul released the album No Parley. My sister was a huge fan, and on that he covered Love Will Tear Us Apart. So a really important song to me, and he covered it and actually released it as a single. But of course it was written by this man, Ian Curtis, who has committed suicide 3 years earlier, and actually had his wife engraved the words Love Will Tear Us Apart on his tombstone. So this is clearly the classic and best version of that song. And yet, Paul sings in tune, Ian doesn't sing in tune. This is actually reasonably well produced. My mum would love this version. You know, there are people who would prefer Paul Young's version to Ian Curtis's version. And that tells us two things. Paul's telling us two things about quality in art. Technical ability is not enough. Just singing in tune is not enough. And liking something is no measure of quality. Just because lots of people like it doesn't mean it's quality. This is very difficult to see. So this is a picture by Mark Rothko. And it's a black square on a red background. And what you're actually seeing here is not just a black square, you're seeing Rothko the artist. Similarly with Duchamp's urinal. Not a lot of technical quality, but this was voted the most important modern art piece of modern art ever. And to take it to an extreme, the Tate decided to buy a work of art by Piero Manzoni, which was a can of his own excrement. And this is what the Tate would deem to be quality art, but it might not be to everybody's taste. A lot of people say when they see that, but is it art? Well, I find this a really strange question. Nobody ever asks, is it a book when they see a book? Nobody ever asks if I'm singing, maybe if I'm singing, is it music? And I think Rosenblum, there's a quote here, which what we should be asking is it good art? That's what we should be asking. And this needs a consensus among informed people, artists, dealers, curators, collectors. We need a consensus of what constitutes good art. I'd like to finish with a quote from Picasso, because I think this sums it up in one sentence. What a dreadful thing taste is. Taste is the enemy of creativity. And I think that's what drove him to be able to produce what a lot of people think is the greatest work of modern art, and of course it's a matter of opinion, but Demoiselle d'Avignon was a classic work by Picasso, demonstrating that he wasn't just going for what was popular and what people would like. Thank you.